I think the point is that they are looking for a point of traction with people who might be protesting and feeling riled up and all that. An argument to make against violence is that it is counterproductive. I don't think that is a morally objectionable argument to make. I think one often sees that about political violence, where you say, well, this is actually counterproductive to your cause. That is simply a point of argument, along with the idea that disorder, is wrong and itself and shouldn't be tolerated.
Doesn't that speak poorly of their base, though, that they have to have this argument that, well, don't do this, guys, because it's hurting your political goals, not because you shouldn't be doing violence because violence is bad? Like, does their base not agree with the idea that violence is bad on its face? And what does that say about them?
So I see where you're coming from on that, but I would argue that it is, what we're talking about is a very small group of people now who are involved in actual acts of violence. Now, where I think Democrats struggle even in making that argument is the people who are throwing Molotov cocktails are not social democrats by and large. They're either vandals or people who are, anarchists, revolutionary socialists, whatever. So I actually think that although the effort is to get traction with the argument that it's counterproductive, people who are anarchists, for example, aren't going to listen to anything Democrats say, because anarchists have a different view of the whole society and actually wish to inflame matters further. So in that sense, I think it is a difficult situation for Democrats, because they are being held in a sense responsible, or Trump is seeking to hold them responsible for the actions of people over whom they have no control.
We should probably get into some of these arguments against the Trump administration sending in the National Guard, as well as now members of the Marines. Some have focused on the cost of doing so, which I find a bit silly. I mean, there wouldn't be the requirement to send troops in if people weren't rioting and if the local police were capable of handling the situation, which, according to all the videos that came out over the weekend, they weren't capable of doing. And although obviously $134 million is a lot of money, the idea that this would be a significant portion of fire recovery or Medicaid programs or SNAP programs is a little out of pocket. The other argument they've made is that Trump doesn't have the authority to do so, which is obviously not correct. Even Biden's former Pentagon spokesperson said in a recent television hit that he absolutely has the legal authority to do this. This is part of the president's purview. Pete Hegseth gave a similar answer during his congressional testimony yesterday, but wanted to get your reaction, Niall, to some of the pushback on Trump for sending in the troops.
So a few things. Firstly, in relation to authority, I think that is one of the weaker Democratic arguments. My reading of the law is that he does have authority. There is an asterisk to that, in the sense of the authority is supposed to go through the governor. Now, it is not, I would say, crystal clear from my reading of the statute in question whether that means you have to have the governor's permission, or whether the governor should simply accede to presidential demands. But the argument is that if if federal law cannot be executed, a president does have the right to do that. Where I would disagree with the views that you have put forward, Amber, is in relation to the idea that the local police don't have the capacity to take care of it. The fact that people break the law does not mean that the rule of law has entirely broken down, and we see occasionally unrest or just crime, and that's what the police forces are there for. I think you get into a very dangerous situation if you say anytime there is any kind of protest that justifies sending in the National Guard or sending in the Marines, and you risk in doing that inflaming a situation further. And we see just in the past 48 hours or so, these protests spreading from Los Angeles primarily and some other places in California across the nation. That, to me, it gets to the heart of this issue, which is not about the legality of Trump doing what he did, but the efficacy of it, if the goal is in fact to restore peace and order. I'm not personally persuaded that is his goal, because I think he sees political dividend in being as polarizing as possible. And just one thing on him garbing himself as the president of law and order, and we are not going to tolerate crime and so forth. Among the people he pardoned in relation to January the 6th, Devlin Thompson, who hit a police officer with metal baton, Robert Palmer, who attacked police with a fire extinguisher, a wooden plank, and a pole. Those people were worthy of pardons in Trump's mind. That does not suggest to me a president who really cares about law and order. Instead, he cares about hitting his enemies and rewarding his friends.
Well, local police did say that they did not feel that the situation was properly contained, despite the statements made by Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass early on when the car started being set on fire, when ICE agents, who are federal officers, were being barricaded in buildings by these rioters, right? So they were actually impeding federal law enforcement efforts in order to round up illegal immigrants.
Who are you saying was impeding it, sorry?
The rioters.
Okay, sorry,
Yeah.
I thought you were saying.
Yeah, this all started because ICE had a warrant that they were executing to arrest criminal illegal aliens, including child rapists, fraudsters, domestic abusers. There was a false claim from a local Democratic official that they were raiding a Home Depot and trying to pick up day laborers, which ended up not being true. So these rioters showed up and they actually tried to block ICE from leaving the building with these criminal illegals, and that's what spurred the entire riot that ended up happening. And I would venture to guess that based on some of the tactics that they always intended for this to be a nationwide protest. Else why would the SIU president be there trying to get arrested by helping these rioters block these things? This was a very...
It was the California SEIU president, so
Right.
He was in his home state then.
Yes, but I think that they were trying to get some high-profile person arrested, just based on what we know about groups like Antifa, Black Bloc, BLM. They often do this where they try to get a high-profile arrest in these protests in order to spur nationwide action. This has been their playbook for the past 15 years.
I think we're almost out of time, I've been told, but I can't let the idea that Antifa and the SEIU are somehow comparable organizations. I mean, one is self-evidently a radical leftist organization and one's a very well-established labor union.
Oh, unfortunately, we're out of time. Does Elon Musk regret lashing out at President Trump? That's next.